Good afternoon. I'm Commissioner Joshua Simmons, and I thank you for joining us today as we gather as a community and as a nation to commemorate Juneteenth and remember the liberation of enslaved men, women, and children only a short 155 years ago. Today, African Americans across the U.S. reflect and remember our journey, our history, and our belief in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Earlier this year, I brought the idea of hosting a community event to commemorate Juneteenth to my fellow commissioners, and I was happy to receive their support. I envisioned a gathering of people right here in the heart of Coral Springs. I wanted to celebrate with food, togetherness, and uplifting performances by African Americans from our own community here in Coral Springs. Well, a lot has changed since we started planning for this event. A worldwide pandemic, a worldwide movement to push for changes in policing and uprising against hatred, bigotry, and racism. But one thing remains steadfast: my commitment to commemorate this day in our nation's history. So while our event has transitioned to virtual, and I'm happy you all are joining us today, it is still meant to provide you with insight and inspiration about what Juneteenth symbolizes. For me and many descendants of slavery, Juneteenth comes with mixed emotions. We are celebrating 155 years of freedom, but we are still suffering a great deal today, and we continue to fight. 155 years after our ancestors were finally freed, we are still fighting to end systemic racism, bias, and other social inequities. As Americans, our nation has come so far, but so much more needs to be done. And so again, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to bring up our first guests, Bessie Criswell and Penny Miller, who will perform the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that the tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might keep us near to the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Oh, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
If you have never heard Lift Every Voice and Sing, I am very happy that you heard it today. It is a very powerful song, and it basically just talks about the struggle of slaves. And, you know, the one thing about black music is we use it to paint our pain and our experiences, because sometimes we had no other way of expressing those experiences. So thank you, Ms. Miller and Dr. Criswell. All right, so next I'm going to give the history of Juneteenth. So, I hope you guys are still with us, and I hope you guys are enjoying this. So, as our city's first African-American commissioner, I am proud to host our inaugural Juneteenth celebration, a tradition I look forward to continuing. As we work to create the kind of country that we want for future generations, the end of slavery has a deep layered meaning in American history. We cannot deny our nation's past. Rather, we must ensure younger generations are educated and aware of our history, which I will now share with you. So on June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, thousands of enslaved men, women, and children of Galveston, Texas, were finally liberated. Major General Gordon Granger's Union soldiers landed in Galveston to deliver the news that the Civil War had ended. We were finally set free. General Gordon Granger issued the call with General Order Number 3 saying, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." This day represents freedom and independence for our African American community. The news that liberated the last enslaved in our country has been a day of celebration and festivities for decades. Juneteenth is a day now observed and celebrated in America in honor of African American achievements in the United States. It is a day for all Americans to recognize as a symbolic milestone of our community's path towards equality and unity. And as Fannie Lou Hamer once said, none of us are free until we're all free. And so now we're going to have some readings and some stories discussing the Black American experience in America.
Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade wind soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I'll tell you. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the time, I've been climbing on, and reaching landings, and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark, where there ain't been no light. So don't you turn back. Don't sit down on steps, 'cause you find it's kind of hard. Don't fall now, for I'm still going, honey. I'm still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair.
Dream Deferred by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just acts like a heavy load, or does it explode?
Sound only exists if someone is around to hear it. When a tree falls and no one is around to listen to it, sound does not exist, but the motion disrupts the moment, disturbs the peace. A Black woman's body is made up of bark, skin that sinks in the sun, roots that have nurtured generation, rings that carry knowledge. Our soil have raised up legacies. Anything we touch grows. We've helped build the foundation you stand on, weathered storms of abuse, bent backwards in the face of adversity. We rarely break, even bloom after. We've bared fruit on barren land, yet they keep us at the bottom, remind us of our place. I was once told to marvel at where I was planted as a Black woman in the 21st century and how much my roots wouldn't have lasted back then. They've looted our bodies for centuries, stole us of our molasses, branch broken to build corporations, yet they won't say our names, say it's too difficult to pronounce, so they hide the enunciations in the dark parts of their mouth. They know that light will show the truth, so they use a loaded barrel to block the sun, to stop the growth, forcibly uprooted our trunks, so they turn around and ask us why we aren't bearing fruit as before, why we aren't smiling, why we aren't producing as much, while the Black daughters we birth are left hanging from our bodies. When a Black woman mourns, you are not around to listen. And when her daughter body falls, no one hears the sound. When it hits the ground, when it disrupts the silence, when a Black girl corpse collapses into an early grave while in the comfort of her bedding, and no one is around to listen, they will question if it happened. When she gets buried to make the soil rich again, will her name travel 6 feet along with her? Will she be forgotten? How long will the hashtag last? How long will her name last in our memories? We tend to remember the trauma that lives in the skin. A Black woman's body is made up of bark. Are you ally enough to stop them from looting our bodies? When a tree falls and no one is around to listen, sound does not exist. When a Black woman falls and no one is around to listen, will you believe that the sound existed? Will you listen? Will you be around to disturb the moment, to say her name, to show up for her like she would have shown up for you?
Those were some very powerful poems. A few of those, the two in particular, I could point out, I was raised on. My mother used to read A Dream Deferred to me all the time, and she also used to read to me Mother the Sun. And those poems helped bond me and my mother, and so I'm kind of emotional a little bit because of just seeing those and what we're doing today with celebrating, commemorating Juneteenth. It's just emotional. So I'm going to continue with the program. For the past 30 years, the Coral Springs Martin Luther King Jr. Committee, with the support of the city, has dedicated itself to living and perpetuating the dreams of Dr. King. It is an honor for our city to have active members of the community who embody the ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? The person I'm going to present to you today is someone who lives each day to make her community a better place. Through coaching and counseling, raising money for scholarships, coordinating retreats that focus on peace, unity, and diversity, she is an exemplary resident of the city of Coral Springs. She genuinely demonstrates that the time is always right to do what is right. I am truly honored to present to you this year's MLK Monument Award recipient, who is also one of the 6 founding members of the MLK Scholarship Program, Dr. Bessie W. Criswell. Come on up. And congratulations, Dr. Criswell, and thank you for being an advocate of peace in our city. This is your award. So you can leave it here, I know, but want to make sure, show it off, let everybody see it. There we go. All right.
Thank you. All right. I am truly honored to be this year's MLK Monument Award recipients. Thank you so much, Commissioner Joy Carter and Janet Zace, who nominated me. I really appreciate it. As a member of the MLK committee, I feel so blessed to serve on the scholarship committee as the chair. For the past 25 years, as part of the city's annual MLK celebration, the MLK committee has offered a scholarship program in honor of Dr. King. The committee augments funds through fundraising events and donations sought from local businesses and individuals. Scholarships are awarded regardless of ethnicity, race, or creed. The purpose of the MLK Scholarship is to provide funds to financially deserving local students who, through their words and action, embody the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s teaching on peace, racial harmony, community service, and bettering the lives of others. Consideration is also given to the quality of community service performed by the applicants. On behalf of the Scholarship Committee, I am so proud to share with you the class of 2020 recipients. From Cora Glades High School, we have Cheyenne Levine. From Coral Springs Charter School, we have Gardy Bilot, Gianna Rodriguez, Isabella Zola.
From Coral Springs High School, we have Johan Sofuentes, Marim Khan, Isabella Alfano, Nicole Sansuesa, Dorian King, Tiffany Persad, Kengsha Parikh, and Zanik Reynolds.
And from J.P. Terravilla High School, we have Fabian Lendino and Boaz Levy. From Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, we have Catherine Chirac, Mariana Lopez, Daniela Guerreres, and Zariah Simpson. I wish you all success in all your future endeavors.
Happy Juneteenth, everyone. My name is Zion Gilbert.
Happy Juneteenth, guys. My name is Lance Albert.
Happy Juneteenth, everyone. My name is Jordan Fields.
And we are all a part of Omega Psi
Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated was founded November 17, 1911, on the campus of Howard University.
Our fraternity was founded by 4 great founders, Dr. Arthur James Cooper, Professor Frank Coleman, Bishop Edgar Love, and Dr. Ernest Everett Just.
Our fraternity stands on 4 cardinal principles. That's manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift.
QT, right? QT, right? QT, ah, QT, right? I'll break down, hey, oh, my soul, oh, break down. We are marching for the purple and gold, oh, break down, hey, oh, my soul, oh, break down. We are marching for the purple and gold, oh, break down, hey. It goes boom, shaka boom, shaka boom, 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 shaka boom, boom, shaka boom, shaka boom, boom, boom. It was on November 17, 1911. 4 great men had a vision sent from heaven. Gold men, love and just. I say stop with this fraternity just for us. It goes boom, shaka boom, shaka boom, 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 shaka boom, boom, shaka boom, shaka boom, boom, boom. I said let Omega with our heart and soul. I say yes to girl the right, the purple and gold. It goes boom, shaka boom, shaka boom, 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 shaka boom, boom, shaka boom, shaka boom, 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 shaka boom, boom. Aye. Hey, QT. Hey. It goes me Cadillac step. It goes me Cadillac step. It goes me Cadillac, me Cadillac, me Cadillac, me Cadillac. It goes me Q. You say, you say, fight, you say, fight, you say, you say, fight, you say, fight, some people live on what they live for, a Cadillac and diamond rings. I said, some people live on what they live for, a fly ride and diamond rings. I said, all that I live for is Omega Psi Phi. I'm going to be an Omega till the day that I die. All of my love, my peace and happiness, I'm gonna give it to Omega. All of my love, my peace and happiness, I'm gonna give it to Omega. All of my love, my peace and happiness, I'm gonna give it to Omega. All
I know the camera just snapped back on me and I'm cheesing. That's because I'm also a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And those were some of my chapter brothers that did that hop performance. And that was just incredible. And you couldn't see me, but I was back here doing some of the stuff they were doing. I'm not sweating. But I did it. I did everything, right? Thank you again to Dr. Bessie Criswell for reading off the MLK Scholarship recipients. Next I want to bring up just a staple in this community, a beacon of light. I've had the pleasure of knowing our guest speaker for the last couple of years, and she loves giving me stories and giving me knowledge, and so I want to bring up Miss Jackie Bolden.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. I also want to thank the city manager, the commission, the mayor, and particularly Commissioner Joshua Simmons, being the first African-American commissioner here in Coral Springs. I'm Jackie Bolden. I've been a resident of Coral Springs for 19 years. And I am so glad that we're getting started with this program here in Coral Springs. Coral Springs is quite innovative. We have a chance with a number of our committees to bring particular programs to the city, and the city is always welcoming and to help us with whatever we're trying to accomplish. Africans were forcibly brought to North America. We read, my husband and I, about year 1500. However, the history denotes this as the year 1619. Therefore, about 360 years before the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by our President Lincoln in 1863, it's been about 300 years that our people have been enslaved. During an interview in February with the marketing department, I had told them a story about my intervention with, I was marching in the 60s when I was a college student way back then. Do you guys remember the Martin Luther King Scholarship? Not the scholarship. Scholarship is so much on my mind oftentimes, but the Martin Luther King program, and too, Jesse Jackson came to our school. And I was in school in Virginia. Jesse Jackson came to our school and tried to interest some of us to march, to integrate the programs and whatever in our area, particularly the counters, to just eat in at the counters at the diners. So we had said initially, I don't want to do that. College students, remember, 17 years old. I don't want to do that. It wasn't. What do we know? It's not so important to us. So we started doing it, and then my friends and I, who like to put on cute little clothes, we decided we're going to go and integrate one of the tea rooms that was over across town in Newport News, Virginia. So we went upstairs, beautiful area, and we sat down to have tea. Nobody asked us, but we thought, this is nice, this is really elegant, and we thought we were going to have the tea. Soon we heard this noise, and this noise was, eventually this voice said, move or I'm going to turn it on. Turn it on what? It was a big fire hose. I had never seen a fire hose other than a garden hose. Turn the fire hose on, so we just start running down the circular stairs in the hills. It was dangerous, and we were afraid, but when we got outside, they had our black students in chains and also in handcuffs and also dogs. If I had told my mom I was doing that, she would have said, come home right now. So then I started writing with the newspaper in my college in Virginia. That wasn't really in my notes, but I just thought maybe I'd add that just to let you know the years that I've gone through, whatever, trying to work with getting people free and getting others to understand that we have been trodden upon for a long, long time. Okay, now I'm in D.C. and I'm teaching in D.C. and suddenly, our principal comes around the rooms and say, "Oh, the city is on fire. The city is on fire." And there was a Jaguar dealership right there next to us, and the Jaguar dealership went up in smoke. So I'm trying to get out to Maryland now, where we now live in Maryland, and a young white lady was driving with me because this is our first house. These are most of the first houses, and most of us had one car. So I drove one week, and her name was Mary. She drove the other week. So we got to North Capitol and Georgia Avenue, the intersection. A Volkswagen was in front of us, and the guys came across from the street. It was a red light, so they came from the street and they turned that Volkswagen upside down. Mary, get in the floor. Get in the floor, because I was so afraid that it was going to happen to us. So we drove and we got home safely. School was out. Businesses were out for about 2 weeks. I watched DC burn. DC burned. And now, the next time that the cities were burning, in my experience, I was far, far away in New Jersey, but in California, Rodney King, 92 or 93, also, were marching because of the violence and the violence in the street. Then when we were marching, back to when I was in school, we were trying to integrate the lunch counters. We wanted a place to go off campus other than eating cafeteria food. We wanted to go off campus and have something to eat. So we were marching for the education as well. Brown versus the Board of Education had been signed in '54. As I said, this was early 60s that we were still trying to get equal education. Some of us at that time were still talking about going to graduate school. We could not enter graduate schools in the early 60s. So we were marching for housing, for wages, for voting rights. I remember my dad talking about paying poll tax. But poll tax wasn't only for black people, it was for poor people. But black people had to pay the poll tax in order to vote. So there were economic ravages all over town, because now what happens is that NAFTA comes in. A lot of black people, the families that I grew up with, they worked in these factories and worked for companies, as whether they cleaned the floors or at that point, sometimes in the 60s, some of the young women had become like secretaries, or you're working in the cafeterias. But when NAFTA came, no jobs. So those towns became ravaged with economics. People did not have jobs. And people had difficulty sending their kids to school. But most of us, like me, got a 50% scholarship from the state of Virginia to go to school. Okay, some of you might ask me, so how much was your education, Jackie? Well, my education at that time to get a BS degree was probably the same cost you would pay for maybe housing for a year. So we made it, but it has gone up and up, but now we can go to those graduate schools. So in 68, back to 68, I saw Washington burn because they had killed Martin Luther King. All of DC is on fire. And as I said earlier, we were out of school and we were out of businesses for about 2 weeks. Then we came to broader challenges after that. We were gerrymandering at the voter box. We didn't have health care. My family did. A number of the families that I knew they did, but people with lower incomes, they had no health care. Child care was a problem too, because how can you go to work and I don't have anybody to take care of my children? The justice system was an issue too, because now that people are much poorer than they were when they could work in some of those factories, there's drugs planted in the lower class communities or the lower wages communities. There was drugs planted. And we felt that our young boys and some older people, possibly some women too, went to jail with strong sentences because of drugs. But then again, drugs became an issue in the suburbs. So then we come with thank you for Betty Ford opening her drug center, but who could afford to go to the Betty Ford centers? So our children were still, whether they were doing the best thing for their families or not doing anything for their families. So that families could not move out of their poverty. The salaries were lower. Some of us now that in my era, graduating college, we got jobs teaching, but I don't know how many more jobs were gotten at that time. But some of the kids became managers. They learning pre-management. When I went to New Jersey, they were learning pre-management. Some of the companies had hired them, like ATT and IBM. They were hiring them as young managers. So, but they didn't move up, and that's another thing that we talk about. Even though they got those jobs, they didn't get the same amount of money. They were not on the same pay scale. We were still working as minority individuals. Redlining, we were trying to buy a house, and redlining was in effect. Is another thing about, we didn't have credit scores, I don't remember at that time. It was about how much money you made. But then, like now, there's such thing as credit scores. If our people cannot get good wages, how can we raise this credit scores in order to get a good salary and in order to buy a home? Back again, the narcotics now are in town because they've gotten out to the suburbs, and as I said earlier, that they have strong sentences, and the racial profiling becomes more and more and more. When my black children were driving from Jersey to their colleges, wherever, yes, we all talk about now how we train the children. If the policemen stop you, what do? You put your hands out of the window. And my husband and I used to put their driver's license on the seat next to them, so you don't reach into the glove compartment, because then at that time we knew about a couple of people in the news had gotten shot because they were reaching into their glove compartments, and it was misunderstood what they were reaching for. So therefore, put your license on the seat in a plastic bag so that you can show and be nice and speak well, whatever you have to do in order to show that you are an individual who values life and values your need and your freedom to drive down this highway to get to my school. In fact, during the 90s, I'm going to the 90s, in California, it started burning in California, and we started rioting. They started rioting because of the brutality in the streets in California. And there again, the cities are burning. A lot of cities are burning across town because of racism, racial profiling, and whatever we need to do in order to get our independence and our freedom and the justices for us. Here we are in the 2020s, and cities were burning. I'm glad that they have stopped burning, but we're still marching for our justices. Justice isn't the same to everyone. But in the cities burning in 2020, we have done our work now. We've done our work. We've gone to school. A lot of us have not been able to go to school, but we still need to do so much in each one of our cultures, in all of our neighborhoods, to bring all of our children, young people, young mothers, up to par so they can afford their families, so they can feed their children, so they can send the children to school. And we're still trying to get the education being the same all over town, all over the cities, as the education in the school wherever the children are going to school. Black, white, poor people, white people, everybody to get the same education. Now we've come in today, we're talking about where we were as slaves. Africans did not come here because they wanted to come here. So we have the DACA program for these children who want to get their education and be here, and justice for all. So we're talking about slavery to prison. We're working for that. We're trying to get those kids out of the era that they want to do violence. All children, all people, I should possibly say. So we want freedom in the work environment. We want freedom in housing, because they're still gerrymandering. Voter suppression. Now we're in this era now to voting. We're changing the districts. We're changing the districts on how we can vote. And we become such a political system. Well, why can't we be a moral system? And that's what I want. That's what I'm hoping and praying, that we will get to that moral system. And I feel strongly about our Constitution. If we follow the Constitution, and justice for all, and we are moral being, we're moral people in all of our cultures, then I can see that we are going to reach that point where we will have the justice for all. We're working together here in Coral Springs to bring the residents and the cultures together in harmony. I think here in Coral Springs we're doing a good job because we do allow the committees to come together. And as I said earlier, and Coral Springs helps us to bring the residents together in peace. And I tell Coral Springs residents, like I used to tell my black children, when you leave home, be a Bolden. When you leave home, wherever you are, act like the residents of Coral Springs. We're proud here in Coral Springs. Be that person. Again, I'm so thankful that we're having this first union today here with Juneteenth, and hopefully we can continue. I've heard that it's being spoken about that it could be a national holiday, whether it is or not, to bring the understanding for everyone. We use this terms about racism, and do we understand what racism is actually? Racism is all the things that I've talked about, whether it's education and whether it's housing, is police respecting everyone, but they have to do their job as well. No, I don't feel, and I'm not here to speak about the politics, but I'm not here about defunding the police, because police have a job to do too. And that's what I mean too. We have a job to do morally so that we can be respected around and justified for all people right here in our own town. Let's have a beginning here that we have kind of started, and we're going to, as I said, be Coral Springs residents, and we're going to show the people in our area that we are Coral Springs residents, and we stand for justice and peace for all. Thank you.
Solemn trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging, southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scenes of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouths, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to ride, for the tree to dry. Here is a strange and bitter cry. Bitter cry. Talking about strange fruit. Oh, pirates, yes, they robbed, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took flight from bottomless pit, but my hands were made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Yes, all I ever had were redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy. We won't let them stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while they stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Well, won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had were redemption songs. Yes, all I ever had, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing this song of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs. I had redemption songs.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Commissioner Joshua Simmons for hosting today's inaugural Juneteenth celebration. In the city of Coral Springs, we believe in community and unity in our community more than ever before. Now, more than ever, our celebrations like this one must be hosted so that we can continue to educate our future leaders.
Juneteenth commemorates an important moment in our nation's history. It was the day where the promise of freedom was given to every man, woman, and child in America.
Today we celebrate the independence of African Americans and acknowledge the hardships to achieve that freedom. Let Juneteenth remind us that as we build our nation's future, we should not forget its past.
The Coral Springs City Commission is proud to honor and commemorate Juneteenth. It is so important for us as a city, state, and nation to make sure that we never forget the promise of the Emancipation Proclamation, freedom for all.
All right, I hope you all are still with us. The artist, Miss Floyd, that sang Strange Fruit, that was incredible. That was absolutely incredible. And I hope you all enjoyed that. I want to definitely say thank you to the commission for sending those messages out during this day. I know they would be here. We'd all be out somewhere if we could, but obviously want to make sure everyone's safe during this time. And so I want to thank everyone who tuned in and were inspired by today's Juneteenth program. We should never deny our nation's past, regardless of how painful that past may be. Our history is a lesson for us today and for generations to come. But remember this, we get to choose what kind of country we want America to be. We have to stand up and put our foot down and commit to ending the division, the hatred, the ugliness that we are seeing on a daily basis. We are better than this. And I know that many of you out there are good people, and we need all good people to join together to make sure that we have a country that our children want to grow up in. It is our obligation to battle against injustice, that we banish bigotry in all its forms, and that we work together in unison towards real equality for all. I ask all of you today, please educate your children, our future, to know better than all of us, to be better than all of us. And more importantly, let's honor the sacrifices of our ancestors and recommit ourselves to create the change we want to see. For that is what Juneteenth celebrates, and that is how we should honor it. Juneteenth will always be a day of celebration. No matter what is going on around us, we have to celebrate this milestone. So in closing, I want to thank Bessie Criswell, Penny Miller, Jasmine Floyd, Leilani Smith, Zion Gilbert, Lanes Albert, Jordan Fields, Luam Germain, Wesley Norwood, Sharika Mitchell, Jackie Bolden, my fellow city commissioners, city staff, for celebrating our freedom together. And I want to take a moment to briefly reiterate my thanks to city staff. You may not be able to tell, but we put this together in a pretty short time with everything that we have going on. And I know me personally, I am extending my thanks to every member of our city staff that worked on this, that saw that this was important, and that put their own time and energy into this and gave their best effort. They weren't just doing it because I asked it to be done. They put their time and energy and effort into this because they understand that we work better together as a community. And so I wish you all a safe weekend. Continue to practice social distancing. Please stay safe. Wear your mask when you're out in public. And we will see you all next year. Happy Juneteenth, y'all.